Hi, my name is Joe Jackosn. I'm an interviewer, journalist and broadcaster. And for the first decade of this century, I did for the Irish radio station RTE Radio 1 a music series titled Under the Influence. Sadly, that title was subsequently used, be it stolen consciously or otherwise, for a similar MTV show. So now, after revisiting the master tapes of those old interviews, I've decided to turn the best into a podcast series called The Music That Made Me. I may even add the subtitle, Made Me Want to Make Music. Either way, what follows is one of those shows, minus music, which for copyright reasons I can't include. Some of the full shows and many of my other radio programs are available on Mixcloud.com. And if you want to read any articles that arose out of these interviews, you can check out JoeJacksonInterviewer.com. Enjoy the show.
Okay, Mark Knopfler. The press release for Sailing to Philadelphia says it's the work of an artist absorbing the influences of 200 years of musical heritage from both sides of the Atlantic. Is that true?
Well, I don't write that stuff.
I know.
And I haven't read it, but, it's certainly... well, it's about right, actually, I suppose. I mean, in a way, I suppose it is. I mean, I ended up in a lot of folk joints when I was a kid because I didn't have an amplifier, basically. Okay. I couldn't afford one.
All right.
I didn't have the heart to ask my dad for one because he'd shelled out for an electric guitar, and I didn't have the heart to ask him for an amplifier, so I blew up the radio. And
playing the guitar through the amp in the radio.
Yeah, I adjusted the jack. I got it altered at the little electric shop.
Right.
I got a little red jack and a little black jack at the end of it, and plugged it into the back of the radio.
Where your pickup record player should have gone.
And and I got 1.5 watts of seething, pulsating power. But I used to borrow friends' acoustic guitars, and that got me into folk places, and I learned a lot about Celtic music, actually, in those places that I probably hadn't expected to. And although I was really interested in American folk music from being such a Bob Dylan fan and everything else, because I'd heard his first album when I was about 11 years old. So I was interested in folk music anyway, and I got interested sort of backwards that way, I learned how to fingerpick, and I'm glad that things kind of went that way because I sort of went down a dual track.
But was it your Uncle Kingsley who taught you 12-bar blues and boogie woogie on piano? That was around the age of 11 or 12 too, wasn't it?
I was younger. I was half that age, yeah.
Okay, so is this famous image I just conjured before we started doing the interview of you with the tennis racket doing your Elvis impersonation?
I think the tennis racket must have been fairly late. I mean, music for me started when I was a baby, crawling about on the floor, and I'm told that I could sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer right the way through at 18 months.
Okay.
So I must have had a facility for remembering the words and the tunes. And whenever they wanted to shut me up, my mum would sing to me, it was a done deal.
What would she sing?
I don't know. She would probably sing things from the radio that were going on at the time. And I remember, songs from South Pacific and things like The Some Enchanted Evening and things like that when I was crawling about on the floor. I used to listen with Mother a lot when I was a kid, and you can still get those things on CD now, apparently. These collections are...
Housewives' Choice and all that work music while you work, BBC
while
programs.
Work and all of that, BBC programs.
So if we were to kick off with a song that would remind you of those days, would it be an early rock and roll, boogie woogie, or what would it be? Or do you want to hear one of those BBC songs?
One of the earliest ones would have been The Big Rock Candy Mountain, which was Burl Ives. But actually, Burl Ives was not the original version. I have heard the original version, in fact, and it was a little rougher. But, and I didn't know what... I mean, when we were listening to those songs as little kids, we didn't know what a hobo was. Didn't know it was a hobo song. Didn't even know what a hobo was.
Right.
But we just liked it.
Okay.
And we didn't know the term country and western.
Right.
Or any of that. I mean, that was one of the wonderful things about Innocence as pre-skiffle. and even the innocence of skiffle, which I mean we'll come to. There was this lovely innocence around
Right.
at the time that we didn't care if music was black or white or happy or sad. We just liked it.
So do you want to hear Burl Ives, or is there another one? Burl Ives?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I'd love to hear that just because I mean I'm sure I still know all the words to it.
Okay. Okay. So Mark Knopfler, we got a surprise for you there. That was the original of
That
not
indeed
the
was
Big Rock
yes, that
Candy
indeed
Mountain.
was the original, which is actually on the soundtrack, which has just come out to the George Clooney thing. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And that's a wonderful collection of music that's on there. There's some tremendous stuff on there from my friend Gillian Welsh, and
All right.
she's with Emmy Lou, another friend of mine, and I should name drop in here,
Okay.
and Alison Krauss.
All right.
And there's some tremendous stuff on there. It's put together by T-Bone Burnett.
Okay, I'll drop another name then. I believe you were 15, you saw Chuck Berry, and you were in heaven.
Oh man! Well, you're jumping massively.
Am I?
forward
Okay,
now.
well, so you take me through the actual line.
Well, I
But
suppose
Chuck was electric rock and roll you were encountering
yeah,
there.
when I
big
was
time.
15, Newcastle City Hall, and Chuck Berry. I mean, I knew I was going to see something good, but I never realised it was going to be that good. And he came on stage doing the big, duck walk thing, staring at the audience and playing his guitar, and I was completely mesmerised. And it's funny, that I thought the City Hall was such a big place when I was that age, and whenever I've gone back to play there, and I am going to go back to play there again on this tour coming up, but I always try and get back there, and it's such a tiny little hall.
Do you do the duck walk just out of homage
Well,
to Chuck?
I will. I have been known, I have been known to do that.
But what was it about Chuck? Was it the blend of the lyrics, the power of the man performing, the guitar work? What was it that really made that impact?
Well, it's a combination. I mean, he's one of the greatest lyricists in rock and roll. I mean, the words just bouncing and ricocheting off each other, echoing off each other. It's one of the great things about the language, that it does that, or can do that if you do it right, And he certainly did it right with just about everything that he wrote. And,
So for people who might want to hear what you're talking about, let's throw in a Chuck Berry tune from then.
yeah.
You want to pick one?
Oh, God, I could pick. I mean, there's so many, aren't there? Promised Land.
Promised Land is not that often played. Will we try it?
Sure.
Gospel bass to it too, which is great. Kind of gospel feel to it.
Yeah, you could play the... Yeah. you could play
Chuck's original version, not Presley and James Burton's thing from the 70s. But that was good.
The Johnny Horton one.
Johnny Horton, yeah. Okay.
Or you could play Brown Eyed Handsome... Oh, no, You Never Can Tell is lovely.
Oh, it's a great one, yeah. Yeah. That was a later one, 64, 63,
Yeah,
64.
that was the later one, but what a lovely...
Okay, let me
lyric.
answer that. I think it is. I'll give that question to you again, because it's the kids growing up in all the 45s, all rock, rhythm and jazz, their little collection of records.
Yeah, that's right.
Great images. Okay, Mark, if I was to play a Chuck Berry song, would you pick one for us?
Well, it would be too obvious to play Roll Over Beethoven and all that, and Sweet Little 16, which is a killer.
Yeah.
We'll go for something a little bit more obscure and have You Never Can Tell, which I always liked. I could always see the situation and
The couple.
dig the images.
Teenage wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's hear about the teenage wedding. You can hear it, can't you?
And and he was writing for teenagers too. I mean, it's a reminder that the teenager actually then was a pretty new phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, teenagers had started to work and get their own money, and they could afford to buy their own clothes and their own music, and it was getting away from the Twin Set and Pearls and all this Moon and June music
Sure,
that was around,
yeah.
and it was a whole exciting new time. And
Well,
Chuck
he was
Berry,
helping define it.
he absolutely did. He was right on the pulse of that, the teenage thing, the teenage phenomenon.
Yeah. Okay, you hold me earlier. I'm not following the exact lineage here,
Doesn't
but
matter.
I know as a kid, at a point like many of us who are into American music, I'm British or whatever, you made a pilgrimage to the States with your Greyhound bus ticket, and to see the place Blind Willie McTell was born was a big buzz for you.
Oh yeah. Well, I was by that time, I think I was about 26 or something, and I'd been lucky enough to get a job in a college. I'd tried to be a musician and failed, of course.
At what level was that failure then? Was that like locally playing and you didn't get a
I
break?
actually even joined a pro band for a couple of months when I left college, and I was sort of feeling a bit defeated. I'd had some things go wrong and a marriage failure, and I was feeling a bit bashed in, and I got this job teaching at college. A friend of mine rang me up and said there's a vacancy in the English department, and I had a degree in it, so I gave it a bash, and I had earned more money there, than I'd ever earned in my life, and I got a motorcycle and got myself organised, and I got a little flat and everything, and I was going along quite well, and I was playing in a rockabilly, an R&B group called the Cafe Races in the college and around London, around pubs and everything at night time. And I'd saved up enough money to buy a Greyhound bus ticket and a cheap flight to the States, and it got me all the way around the States, and even had a little trip down to Mexico, thrown in actually when I was from LA, and I ended up in Philadelphia of all places before I went back home.
But was it a musical pilgrimage, or were you just wanted to get away from here? And did you go to the places?
It was fantastic. It was a musical pilgrimage for me, and I went straight down through Atlanta and Blind Willie McTell country, and I remember being very, excited about all that, and down into New Orleans, and stayed at the YMCA actually in New Orleans, and it was just I was so electrically alive, with having built up this whole thing about the music, so it was an important. It even ended on an important note for me, because I'd got a little bit stoned and I went to this park in Philadelphia, and there was a gospel group singing there, big black gospel group, and it was just a stunning experience for me. And it reminds you, of course, that, to British kids, and a lot of kids probably from Ireland, the music was so important that we distilled it, our generation of kids. We a lot of kids in Europe too, but the fans somehow, both of knowing the English, the British musicians that came out of that are sort of ultra fans, that it was rare and it was precious.
Right.
And you'd have a mate who had 2 or 3 blues records, and because it wasn't just all on tap, that's, I suppose, why I'd sit up to the late at night listening to Radio Luxembourg. If you couldn't afford a record collection, you'd have a mate with a few and that sort of thing. You'd moon over your the first Fender that you ever saw in a shop. All of that. You'd be slightly obsessive about the whole thing, which of course I was.
And what about the gospel group? Can we play a gospel tune that would remind you of how that reconnected you with the purity of the music and all that? Is there a gospel?
Oh, well,
even the gospel group you sing about in your new album?
I suppose.
Have they recorded?
I suppose you could. If you could take something by the Fairfield Four, that would be nice, because that's where I got the Baloney Again idea from.
Yeah.
I was reading on the liner notes, the guy that wrote the liner notes to the last Fairfield Four record. He'd said, it might have had touring in the deep south in America in the early 50s. It might have been like, you might have had to have been a bologna sandwich rather than a steak in a white restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's all it took to get me going. I remember, because obviously the bologna thing struck me as the possibilities with the word, and that's all it took to get me away. So you could play anything by the Fairfield Four if you like to do that.
I have a CD of theirs in my bag by coincidence. I do. Right. I bought it from my girlfriend. It's an old gospel collection, so we can play the Fairfield Four. Okay, coming out of that, Mark Knopfler, you talked there earlier about kind of earning more money when you were teaching than you had kind of when you were playing the local bands or in bands, even going pro.
Yeah.
But wasn't it becoming a rock star with Dire Straits and that gave you enough money to buy a Gibson 50s guitar?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was one of the wonderful things. I mean, I would recommend Success to anybody. I went into guitars. Went into guitar shops. Actually, I made great friends with a very nice Argentinian man who came over to New York with nothing at all and started up a guitar shop. He was a bass player in Argentina, and he just became a friend, and he's always stuck with the best sort of end of things. So he'd get some pretty good guitars, and I bought a few old Fenders and Gibsons, in my time. I tried to avoid becoming a collector. I didn't want to be a collector. I don't want to really be a collector of anything particularly, but you kind of become a curator by accident, really.
All right.
I mean, people give you things and you buy things, and
What would a Gibson 50s guitar cost? I mean, is it a couple of grand? Is it a lot of money?
My first Gibson cost me £80 when I was back in when I was a youngster back in Leeds, and it was I don't know where I got that money from, because back then I was being paid £10 a week, slightly less.
And nowadays for a 50s Gibson, what kind of price would you pay for it? Lots of money.
Yeah, you can pay thousands.
Do you?
You can do, yeah.
Do you still get this, you were talking where the way gospel kind of reconnected you with the purity. When you pick up one of those guitars, do you still remember the kid you were and the buzz you got the first time you actually held your own?
Oh.
Do you still get that root feeling?
I still pull over to the side of the road, when there's a window full of guitars, I would still love to look at them. I mean, I was so into it that I actually, there was a boy when I was at school making one in an imitation, he was making one in the woodwork room, and I used to go down there at breaks and after school to watch him make it, just so that I had the chance occasionally of just being able to pick the body up.
All right. Okay.
And that's how much I want. He was obviously the Fender Strat kind of shape.
All right.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm still a sucker for.
And when you see influences cited. Oh.
We'll start again.
Yeah. You see influences cited in terms of your own guitar style, and I've seen Richard Thompson, I've seen J.J. Cale. But the earlier guys, and you played with Chet Atkins, what about the early icons in, we'd say, like Hank and the Shadows or Dwayne Eddy or any of that stuff? Would you have hooked into any of that, or would it have been the guys playing like Scotty Moore on the rock records and Chuck?
Well, it started with the Shadows. I had an EP. It was one of the first records I ever bought when I was about 7 years old, and it had Wonderful Land on it and stuff like that. I mean, I was so into all that, and the sound.
Of Hank's sound.
Yeah, just the sound of that Strat, I was so into the whole thing.
And
it was really good actually to be able to, because I actually got the chance to try to recreate that, and there was a sort of a little tribute thing that was done a while back, and also got the chance to do Wonderful Lad with Hank as well, which was great. But it meant a lot to me. I mean, I used to be the kid at the back of the classroom, making that sound, and the teacher would come in, Knopfler, stop making that metallic sound at the back of your throat, boy.
What Wonderful Land?
Yeah, I'd be singing all that and hammering on the desk and doing all the drums on the Wipeout on the desk and all that.
Wipeout, we all were thrown out of the classroom for that.
Yeah.
But do you want to hear Wonderful Land again?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when would you not want to hear that?
Okay, Mark, we've moved out of Wonderful Land, and I read somewhere recently that you were saying you wrote Sultans of Swing and Money for Nothing by way of spying on the world. But then you realised when fame came to you that people were looking at you, and it changed your way. It kind of encroached on your style of writing.
Well,
did
no,
it?
I mean, I was exaggerating somewhat. I mean, it's just that some of the songs that you write, you are actually just leaning in a doorway, and looking at things, but. You get the impression when you're first successful that people are looking at you, and you're not used to it, is what I meant. You're not used to the reversal. But in fact, you get used to anything. I mean, and it doesn't bother me at all now. And in fact, people aren't looking at you at all. I mean, that's what I think. I think actually people don't really care. I just go on looking at the world just the way I always did. And
writing about it.
In writing about it just the same.
And was Money for Nothing from standing behind a shelf of microwave oven?
You want to start that one again?
Yeah. There are many stories as to the actual roots of Money for Nothing.
Yeah.
So was it written from behind a shelf of microwave ovens in a New York store?
Yes, it was. It was in an appliance store in New York, and at that time I was living. I spent a few years living in London and living in New York at the same time. I was doing sort of a 50-50, and I was in this store, and it was there was a kitchen display unit in the front window, and with a table and chairs and a whole thing, and then you'd walk in, and then there'd be these long rows of fridges and stoves and things like that. And then at the very back was all the electrical stuff. There was walls of television sets, and they were all tuned to MTV.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy that had been delivering in the back there was sounding off, this bit macho man, and meathead, bonehead, and he was going at it. He had an audience of two. There was a salesman there in his little suit and tie, and there was a little boy there who was probably helping him out, a stockroom boy or something. There was me. And so I was trying to back off because I didn't want the salesman to stop him, because what he was coming out with was so good. So in the end, I sort of started spying behind a microwave. So I remember seeing these microwaves up at eye level, and I was sort of peeking through a hole in there in between them. And I got some of these lines. Actually, some of the lines were so classic; they were all in my mind. So I had to go, and I didn't have a piece of paper or a pen, so I went and asked the office bit eventually, and I sat down. There wasn't anywhere to sit down, so I actually sat down in the kitchen display unit in the front window and started writing the song down there.
And you nuked the meathead in the song, didn't you?
yeah. But it was classic. I mean, I still remember his voice. He sort of. He'd say, "What's that? Hawaiian noises," stuff like that. And he just sort of gave me all the lines.
Look at those faggots and all that stuff. That was all his.
The whole thing. That ain't working.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. I love that.
Did he ever come after you for co-writer rights?
No.
You ever try and punch you out?
I never met him again.
Okay, well, let's hear the song. Mark, you were talking earlier about the kind of the Celtic, where you discovered the kind of Celtic influence, and you tapped into that by using people like Paul Brady and Liam O'Flynn on the Cal soundtrack, and that seemed to be another part of a musical language, like writing that stuff.
And I mean, since I was little, because I was born in Scotland, and we moved to Newcastle when I was 8. But the earliest music I'll remember, some of the earliest music is Scottish country dance music, Jimmy Shand. Andy Stewart and all of that sort of stuff, and I remember clearly, that some hearing music in school, and I mean I didn't realize it until only a couple of months ago, but I've even probably borrowed some of the phrasing in what it is, the guitar phrasing could be like in Scotland before you, it could be from the Bonnie Banks of Loch Lomond. So this is stuff from 3 years old, from 4 years old. You don't even realize, that you're doing. So the Celtic thing, when it was time to do like Local Hero and stuff like that, it wasn't so difficult for me to reach in and make that kind of music, And with Cal, it was a similar sort of thing. And obviously, if you're using the heavyweights, and I mean when it came up to Golden Heart time, one of the first things I did was just go to Dublin, and because I'd written these things, I'd written a couple of tunes like A Night in Summer Long Ago and Done with Bonaparte and Darling Pretty and things, and I wanted to work with these players, and Paul Brady, who was an old friend of mine from a long time back, put together the group of heavyweights that actually I ended up getting involved with, which was Liam O'Flynn, Donal Lunny, Marcin O'Connor, and and so on and so on. So it was. It was great, Sean Keane from the Chieftains, of course. Yeah. And so we just had a lovely time, and I've been able to come back and do things with Donal. Occasionally, I've done a couple of times, and and with Liam, for their recordings, and it was lovely being able to take those guys and bring them out on the road a couple of times in '96.
Right. Okay.
As well. So I've always had a, I suppose, but I actually had a thing about the Celtic thing, but I suppose as well, that it's Scottish. I I actually asked the Irish guys. It was Derek Bell was there as well. He was working with us as well, and I actually asked them. I said, "Is my Celtic? Is it Irish to you or Scottish?" They said, "Oh, it's Scottish. Scottish."
Derek.
And Martin, everybody said, everybody. I think it was. I think it might have been. I said, what? How? You can tell by the intervals.
See, Derek would know, wouldn't he?
What's an interval?
Time to take a break for tea.
Time for an interval. Yeah.
But I know you have said that you mentioned earlier about kind of when you went to America that you'd come out of like a marriage breakup and you were feeling a little bit battered, right? And I know you say you don't write directly about those subjects. You're more a narrative writer. But when you write some of your dark, moody music for movies or that, now I know you have a narrative, it's dictating. But do you ever feel you're expressing yourself at that level without having to put words to it?
I think so. You are doing, to a certain extent. Actually, the trip to America was very important because I was really determined when I got back to get the songs going once and for all. Stop playing with, just stop playing the R&B and rock and roll and the rockabilly for a while and just concentrate on my own songs and get them recorded. Because they were starting to push very hard. Right. All the time I was doing the teaching and all the time I was, working and other stuff. But the songs were pushing harder and harder to get going. I think the personal side of it comes out a lot when you're feeling down. I think that can happen. You can get some of it off your chest right in that way. I think anybody that plays an instrument, and the instrument is your friend, and it will come out that way. Once you start getting used to being a writer, you start think your idea of yourself starts to move a little bit away from being a half-baked guitar strummer and to being a half-baked kind of writer. You sort of drift across from one to the other. You start thinking of yourself as a writer. Then you're using the whole gamut of experience. You're using things that you see, you're using things that you read, but obviously you're using stuff that you feel as well. That becomes part of it. Your own experience becomes part of it. I tend to sort of use a big mishmash of the whole lot.
Right. You were told at the beginning by the BBC that one of your songs had too many words, weren't you?
Oh, no, I wasn't told that. I asked
that. You heard it?
I love that. Yeah, it's true. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Was it Sultans? Yeah. Too many words, so they didn't play it.
Oh, well, what happened was there was a committee on Radio 1, and it was chaired by a peroxide lady whose name I forget. And the record was a big success all over the world, and except in the UK, where this committee had decided that it wasn't going to get played because it had too many words. I asked about it, and they said, no, it had too many words, and I think that's great, because it's absolutely right, of course.
Okay, let's hear too many words. Just as an insert. Okay, coming out of Sultans of Swing with far too many lyrics there. I have heard it said that even reviews of the new album that you have a problem stopping songs. That songs you let them go on too long or that. Do you find that a creative challenge? How do I get out of this song?
I'm just too long with just about everything. It's far too long to make the record. One of the reasons why it took so long is I did 4 films, I think, during. I'm just easily distracted, and that's what they said about me in school.
All right.
And I have very little self-discipline. And, if a song decides it wants to ramble on a bit like me, it will.
You worked. I was interesting. You went before the Dire Straits thing really took off. You were doing a couple of things. Like you worked with Dylan, who was described by many as too many words in a lot of songs. You also did a solo on an album I bought with Scott Walker called Climate of Hunter, and he's a minimalist. Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember that session.
Blues.
Yeah, I remember that. It was just one track on the album. Yeah. It was so out there that I decided that it might be a good idea to instead of recording it in the studio, we could just record it in the control room. So Scott got he thought that was a good idea too. Which, of course, thinking about it, it was probably a completely daft idea.
Still sounds good. It's good acoustic line to his voice. And most of the song is you playing. He doesn't come in for about 1 minute and 3/4.
I played 2 guitars on it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all it was, just those 2 guitars, isn't it? It's a nylon strung and the National.
Yeah, and his voice.
Yeah, and he's just got a handheld mic, like a 58 or something in the control room, and which makes it sound more like a home recording, and that's the way I suppose that's why I suggested it, so that it would sound more as though we'd just, got in front of a tape recorder and done it, which is basically what happens.
So I'm coming back to another of your heroes. You have him on the new album, Van. I mean, you also worked with him in the 80s on Beautiful Vision.
Yeah,
was he? I know he's one of your heroes, but would he have influenced your style of writing, your style of playing, singing? I mean, is he that kind of influential?
Well, I don't know. I think Van certainly. Van was part of the furniture of my life. I mean, he's played in every kitchen I've ever lived in. He's played in every room I've ever rented.
Not live, I presume.
No. And I loved them when I was at school, because I loved all the beat groups, and so I've been with Van ever since, all the way through his entire thing, all the way through my college. And I mean, I saw Van, at Newcastle City Hall again, where I saw Chuck, the same hall. He came with what he called then the Caledonia Soul Orchestra, and it was just unforgettable for me. And I was a huge Van fan at that point, and so it was very nice that he asked me to go and work with him in the 80s. And to do things like Cleaning Windows was great, and it's still one of my favourite songs, for all sorts of reasons. That it's about his influences as well. It's about hearing Muddy Waters and Lead Belly on the street where he was born, and so I've always loved Van, of course, and his. The influences, I suppose, are there. Even when I was writing the song, Van started taking it over in my head. While I was, as soon as I got into the first, writing the first verse, and I could hear Van, and so it was, again, it's lovely when, when he really did sing on it, and of course it was even better than I thought that it would be. It's a nice moment,
Well, but did you write The Last Laugh with him, as a narration, as a song for him, or did you just hear him singing as you were writing it?
Oh no, I wrote the song and then
You realised he was right for it. So shall we play Cleaning Windows with The Last Laugh?
Cleaning Windows?
What? He got me there. Assuming we played The Last Laugh, that was a tune from your latest albums. I suppose this question you're tired of being asked. For fans of Dire Straits, should they look forward to any kind of reunion, or will it just be solo work you're concentrating on?
Well, I think in terms of recording, I love what I'm doing now. I feel as though I've got a lot of freedom of movement. I just enjoy drifting about the world and doing what I'm doing, But we could always play live. I think the band. We would break up for a couple of years after the end of every Mammoth tour that we did, and I would go and do some films or whatever, just to have a more interesting life, I suppose. But we would get together and play. We got together and did the Nelson Mandela thing, at Wembley, and we had to get back together for that, I remember, and we got back together, in fact, not so long ago to do John's wedding. His long-time girlfriend, a couple of years ago, which was enjoyable as well. So,
all right.
It's possible that we could play together, but I'm really enjoying my sort of where the wind's blowing me at the moment.
Is Brothers in Arms, which I believe still sells 1,000 copies a week in Britain, is that any kind of a doppelganger? Is there anything so you're kind of going, oh God, we have to live up to that, I have to live up to that, or is it just you're happy with the achievement and it's...
No, it's fantastic. It was a great time. It was just pure luck, because there were a lot of circumstances that sort of all gelled together to make that critical mass thing happen. But I would never have expected Sailing to Philadelphia to be doing what it's doing. Around Europe, and it's ridiculous. So And I'm just really delighted because I know that when I go on tour, it'll be great fun tour.
Okay, because we talked about the Scott Walker album, which I believe is one of the lowest selling albums in history. It's all about 12,000 copies. So you went from that to one of the largest selling albums in history. That was a pretty good evolutionary move, wasn't it?
It's just, who knows about this? It's
Yeah.
like actually working with films from you occasionally has taught me that there's no rhyme or reason to any of it.
All right. But you are, as you say, hugely delighted by the success of your new album, which is phenomenally popular.
It's great because it means the tour will be fun.
All right.
I don't have to sell a gazillion records, but the fact that it is means that the tour will be great fun, and I'm looking forward to it big time. And it also, I'm organising it so I can have a couple of weeks on and then maybe have a week off, which is great, because
Right.
it's not the way I've done it in the past. It's not the most practical way, but I'm looking forward to doing it that way. Yeah.
Okay, and you talked about using Van's voice. You have a good range of guests. You have James Taylor, you have Gillian Welch. You talked about her and the Squeeze Boys. I mean, again, did they come to you as you were writing the songs and you realised these are right for this narration? Or did you decide in advance?
It's a specific request. It's just something that you envisage when you're writing. And I actually recorded a couple of things with Emmy Lou Harris that I really want to enlarge on. I was just into that, working with different voices, and I'd like to go and record some more things with Emmy. I'd like to record some more things with Gillian, and maybe do something in that area too. I'm just kind of interested in that right now.
Okay.
The man-woman thing.
All right, the dual voices, the two voices.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
that might happen.
Okay, so if we want to play a track to lead us out of the show from the new album, which one do you want us to play? And you can talk us into it if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, well, no, I don't. I mean, who knows?
Give us an option. Give us a
I mean,
choice.
you can take just because the album's called Sailing to Philadelphia, you could give that one have a swing at that. The Sailing to Philadelphia, which James sings on so well.
All right. Okay. Give us a second choice. Because that's been played a lot on the radio over there
Oh, is
as
it?
we stand.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
huge over
All the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, because it's getting the airplay already, so it's almost like, can we get one that maybe, what might be nice to play?
Oh, I know. Okay.
No, I don't know how it would sound at the end, because we referred to and maybe played the gospel group.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
If I
Well,
ask you that question
okay.
again, it's up to you. Yeah?
You can have a go at Bologna again, because I suppose a lot of the time I'm not terribly satisfied with the way the records come out. I don't sit at home and listen to them. So it's nice when something works out where I can kind of bear it, and I think this one came off okay.
As a studio recording, because you do have that feeling, you've said before, a song grows and it sometimes finds its definitive arrangement when you're out there playing live. Don't you feel that?
That's right. Very often does. It sort of evolves, but I think this came up okay. I mean, actually, it was funny because it was when it was in the I remember in the mastering lab, which was Denny Purcell's mastering lab, and I was mastering the record there, and a good friend of Denny's is Dwayne Eddy, and I got to meet Dwayne Eddy because he's a good friend of Denny's, and he's such a nice man, and he was there. And he happened to be listening to Bologna again, and he said, I really like that. He said, yeah, and he said, I really like that. He said, I really like the country section in the middle, So I didn't realize it, That's a funny thing that, I've been at the middle section, the Lord is my shepherd section, you would consider it a country section,
Country section in a gospel song,
Yeah.
why not?
Why not?
Okay, for Dwayne Eddy, we're going to play this. Okay, Mark, I wish you not just great success next year, but I hope you really do enjoy the tour that you're taking out on the road, and we look forward to you maybe coming to Ireland.
Well, thank you very much. I always try my very best to do that.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews Podcast. More can be heard, as I said, at joejaksoninterviewer.com.